At the opening of the 18th century, Boston occupied a narrow peninsula projecting into Massachusetts Bay along New England's Atlantic coastline. Surrounding waters connected the town to regional fisheries, coastal trade routes, and transatlantic shipping networks. Its harbor provided sheltered anchorage, supporting commercial activity that linked Massachusetts with Britain and other colonies. The settlement remained physically compact, with residences, warehouses, churches, and public buildings concentrated within limited space. Maritime commerce formed the foundation of Boston's economy throughout much of the colonial period. Merchants exported fish, timber products, and other goods, while importing manufactured items from Britain. The harbor's strategic position encouraged shipbuilding, transportation services, and commercial investment throughout the community. Economic activity depended heavily upon Atlantic connections and the wider framework of the British Empire. Political authority operated under the provincial structure established for Massachusetts during the colonial era. Town meetings remained important institutions through which local residents participated in public affairs. Elected representatives addressed municipal concerns, while provincial officials administered broader governmental responsibilities. Churches continued to exert significant influence within public life and community organization. Boston's population gradually expanded as commercial opportunities attracted residents from surrounding regions. Artisans, laborers, merchants, mariners, and professionals formed distinct social groups within the town. Economic success created visible differences between wealthy trading families and less prosperous inhabitants. Waterfront districts reflected the practical demands of shipping, storage, and maritime employment. Commercial wharves extended into the harbor, increasing capacity for growing trade volumes. Daily life was shaped by seasonal shipping patterns and fluctuations within Atlantic markets. Connections with Britain brought economic advantages, but also reinforced imperial oversight. Imperial conflicts during the 18th century affected commerce, taxation, and political expectations throughout British America. Military events elsewhere often produced financial burdens that eventually reached colonial communities. As decades passed, discussions concerning authority and representation became increasingly significant. Boston emerged as an important center for political communication within Massachusetts. Printers circulated news, official notices, and public arguments among an expanding readership. Local leaders frequently debated the relationship between provincial rights and parliamentary authority. Merchants closely monitored regulations that affected trade and commercial profitability. Political disagreements intensified after Britain sought greater revenue from its American colonies following major wars. Many residents accepted imperial connections while questioning particular governmental policies. Public meetings became venues for organized criticism of measures viewed as burdensome. Economic concerns often merged with broader constitutional arguments regarding governance. By the 1760s, Boston had become a focal point for colonial resistance movements. Protests reflected both practical economic interests and disputes concerning political principles. Organized groups encouraged collective responses to controversial parliamentary legislation. Non-importation efforts sought to influence British policy through commercial pressure. These campaigns demonstrated the growing capacity for coordinated civic action. Boston's geographic role as a major port amplified the visibility of local disputes. News of developments traveled quickly through shipping connections and print networks. Imperial authorities regarded Massachusetts with increasing concern during these years. In 1768, British troops arrived in Boston amid rising tensions over colonial resistance. Their presence introduced a new dimension to relations between civilians and imperial government. Military occupation within a commercial town created practical and political frictions. Disputes over authority increasingly unfolded in public spaces across Boston. Arguments concerning taxation remained connected to larger questions of constitutional power. Colonial critics challenged policies imposed by a legislature in which they lacked representation. Supporters of parliamentary authority defended imperial sovereignty throughout the empire. The disagreement extended beyond economics into competing interpretations of governance. Public confrontations occasionally heightened tensions between soldiers and residents. These conditions contributed to an atmosphere of growing instability. On March 5, 1770, a confrontation resulted in the deaths of 5 colonists. The incident became widely known as the Boston Massacre. Political leaders and printers ensured extensive public discussion of the event. Competing interpretations emerged regarding responsibility and the use of military force. The episode strengthened distrust among many inhabitants toward imperial authorities. Its significance extended beyond immediate casualties because perceptions shaped political consequences. Boston's role within colonial resistance became more pronounced after the incident. Nevertheless, disagreement continued through debate, organization, and economic protest rather than open warfare. Several controversial taxes were later removed, yet disputes concerning authority persisted. One remaining duty on tea retained symbolic importance within imperial politics. Many colonists objected to the principle behind the tax rather than its cost alone. The Tea Act of 1773 renewed controversy surrounding parliamentary power and commercial privilege. Resistance developed rapidly in Boston as tea shipments approached the harbor. Public meetings drew large participation and reflected widespread political engagement. Colonial leaders sought methods to prevent acceptance of the contested tea. Governor Thomas Hutchinson maintained that the cargoes should be landed according to law. The resulting deadlock revealed deep divisions within imperial governance. Events reached a decisive turning point during December 1773. On December 16th, protesters boarded vessels and destroyed tea cargoes in Boston Harbor. Historical records identify 342 chests thrown into the water. The action directly challenged British authority and property associated with imperial policy. Its consequences extended far beyond the harbor where the destruction occurred. Parliament viewed the event as a serious act of defiance. British officials determined that stronger measures were necessary to restore control. In 1774, Parliament enacted punitive legislation known in America as the Intolerable Acts. The Boston Port Act closed the harbor until compensation requirements were satisfied. Because commerce depended upon maritime access, the closure threatened Boston's economic foundation. Other measures altered Massachusetts' governance and expanded imperial administrative authority. These actions transformed a local dispute into a broader colonial issue. Communities beyond Massachusetts increasingly interpreted Boston's situation as a precedent affecting all colonies. Support networks emerged to assist residents facing economic hardship from the port closure. The British government intended discipline, yet the measures encouraged wider cooperation among colonial opponents. Geography again influenced events because control of the harbor became central to political strategy. Economic pressure was employed as an instrument for achieving governmental objectives. Political conflict now involved competing visions of authority across the empire. Boston stood at the center of a constitutional crisis whose implications extended throughout British America. By late 1774, the town occupied a pivotal position within an increasingly interconnected resistance movement. The period closed with institutions, loyalties, and imperial relationships under unprecedented strain. During late 1774, Massachusetts entered a period of accelerating political transformation following Parliament's punitive measures against Boston. Provincial institutions faced growing challenges as many residents questioned the legitimacy of newly imposed authority. Local committees expanded their activities and coordinated responses across towns throughout eastern Massachusetts. Communication networks linked Boston with neighboring communities sharing concerns about constitutional rights. The Suffolk Resolves emerged from meetings held within Suffolk County during September 1774. The document rejected the Intolerable Acts and encouraged organized resistance to their enforcement. Delegates also urged militia preparation and greater cooperation among affected communities. These measures reflected increasing distrust toward imperial administration within Massachusetts. When the First Continental Congress endorsed the Suffolk Resolves, Boston's local crisis gained wider significance. Political developments now connected Massachusetts directly to broader colonial coordination efforts. British authorities continued strengthening military control within Boston during this unsettled period. The town's peninsular geography remained strategically important to both imperial and colonial planners. Access from the mainland depended largely upon the narrow route known as Boston Neck. Control of surrounding approaches influenced military calculations throughout the developing conflict. Economic conditions remained difficult because commercial restrictions continued disrupting maritime activity. Merchants faced uncertainty while harbor operations functioned under severe limitations. The port's reduced activity affected laborers, artisans, and businesses dependent upon shipping. Economic pressure became inseparable from political confrontation across the region. Tensions intensified during the opening months of 1775. General Thomas Gage sought to maintain royal authority within Massachusetts. Colonial resistance leaders increasingly organized military preparations beyond Boston. Militia stores accumulated in communities outside direct British control. British officials regarded these preparations as a challenge to government authority. On April 19, 1775, British troops marched toward Concord to seize military supplies. The resulting engagements at Lexington and Concord marked the beginning of armed conflict. News traveled rapidly through Massachusetts and neighboring colonies. Militia forces mobilized and converged upon the Boston area. British troops withdrew toward Boston following the day's fighting. Their return placed the town at the center of a new military struggle. Colonial forces established positions around Boston and restricted British movement beyond occupied areas. This encirclement became known as the Siege of Boston. The siege would continue for approximately 11 months. Boston Harbor and nearby coastlines became contested operational spaces. Geography shaped every major decision during the campaign. British forces occupied Boston, while colonial troops controlled much surrounding territory. Neither side initially possessed an easy path toward decisive victory. Supplies became an important concern for soldiers and civilians alike. Food shortages and logistical difficulties affected daily conditions during the siege. The conflict imposed substantial economic burdens upon the region. Commercial routines that had sustained Boston for decades remained severely disrupted. Military realities increasingly replaced ordinary patterns of civic life. In June 1775, attention shifted toward the heights overlooking the harbor approaches. Colonial forces fortified positions in Charlestown across the Charles River. British commanders viewed these fortifications as a direct threat. On June 17th, the Battle of Bunker Hill took place. The engagement became one of the earliest major battles of the conflict. British forces captured the position after intense fighting. The battle nevertheless demonstrated the determination of colonial forces. Casualties underscored the growing costs associated with continued confrontation. Military leaders on both sides reassessed strategic assumptions afterward. The siege persisted despite the outcome at Charlestown. Neither side achieved a complete resolution during the summer campaign. Political authority continued evolving alongside military developments. In July 1775, George Washington assumed command of the Continental Army surrounding Boston. He inherited forces drawn from multiple colonies with varying levels of training. Creating a more coordinated military structure became an immediate priority. Administrative organization proved as important as battlefield operations. Washington worked to improve discipline, supply management, and readiness. Months of relative stalemate followed around Boston. British troops remained inside the town and its defenses. Colonial forces maintained pressure from positions around the occupied peninsula. The siege became a contest of endurance and logistics. Control of waterways remained essential because maritime access connected Boston with external resources. Meanwhile, leadership changes occurred within the British command structure. General William Howe eventually succeeded Thomas Gage as British commander. Yet the broader strategic situation remained difficult. Colonial leaders sought opportunities capable of altering the military balance. By early 1776, such an opportunity emerged. Artillery captured previously at Fort Ticonderoga reached the Boston area during winter operations. These guns expanded Washington's strategic options considerably. Attention focused upon Dorchester Heights south of the town. The elevated ground overlooked Boston and important harbor positions. Its geographic importance had long been recognized. During the night of March 4, 1776, colonial forces fortified Dorchester Heights. The newly established positions threatened British military security within Boston. They also endangered ships operating in the harbor. British commanders confronted a significantly altered strategic environment. An assault against the heights was considered but ultimately not executed. The balance of advantage had shifted toward the Continental Army. British leaders decided that evacuation offered the most practical solution. On March 17, 1776, British forces evacuated Boston by sea. The departure ended the siege of Boston. Colonial forces entered the town after nearly a year of military tension. Boston became the first major objective successfully secured by the Continental cause. The outcome carried political consequences extending beyond Massachusetts. It strengthened confidence in coordinated colonial military action. The campaign demonstrated the importance of geography, logistics, and institutional adaptation. Economic disruption had contributed to political resistance and military mobilization. Local grievances evolved into an organized struggle involving multiple colonies. Boston's experience between 1774 and 1776 revealed how imperial disputes transformed into open conflict. The period reshaped governance, military organization, and regional cooperation in lasting ways. By March 17, the town stood transformed from contested colonial port to revolutionary stronghold.